Hello, welcome. Episode 5 of Craft the Draft for 2025. I'm Mitch. I'm joined by Jonty, and today's episode is an APS special, looking at some of the private school football sides in Victoria, and just looking at the talent on list that are set to play a pretty big role in this year's draft campaign, because school football is a big priority for a lot of these prospects. Often comes ahead of Coates Talent League football, and is still right under the nose of AFL scouts. And Jonty is keen to get stuck into some of the names at some of the schools. Mate, how have you been?
Yeah, really good, really good. It's an exciting part of the year, the school footy season for the players that take part. Some of the tribalism that the schools sort of exhibit and the amount that they get behind their players is something that you don't get at Coates League level. So that atmosphere is something that really can't be replicated anywhere else in the talent pathway just because of how much people do care. And some people say it almost affects the mood of the week in the senior schools. So yeah, certainly a big part of these kids' lives in year 12. So looking forward to diving right in.
Yeah, not quite on the college football level, but I think,
Yeah.
like you said, internally, certainly a lot of pride and passion from those schools. So I think last year, Brighton undefeated campaign. Levi Ashcroft probably the headliner in that side. I think Luke Traynor was another one to feature, and this year, like when you look across, the Vic Metro and some of even the Vic Country boys who are down in Geelong or boarding in Melbourne will feature across the APS season as well. But we'll look at Caulfield off the top. Obviously, quite a strong club when it comes to AFL alumni and members in the team, or even from coaches. Who are the names at Caulfield that will headline this year's grammar side?
Yeah, a really powerful midfield, in particular for Caulfield Grammar. They're probably one of the big three from a APS point of view that's always right up there competing for the premiership alongside Brighton Grammar, who you touched on, and Haileybury, who won it a couple of years ago. But Caulfield have produced players like Nick Watson and many, many others, as you touch on. Murphy Reid last year was probably the headline act out of that school. This year they've got another top five fancy, and Ollie Greaves who'll probably lead that midfield brigade. But then they've also got Callum Smith from the Dandenong Stingrays, who's flying under the radar a little bit, but internally at the Stingrays he's rated really highly, and at Caulfield Grammar as well. And then they've got Rory Wright, who's bolted into first round calculations. So having Greaves, Wright, and Callum Smith in a midfield is really, really imposing. And then they've got some really talented bottom majors. Marlon Eocleus is a highlights reel in the forward line. Will Melody is his roommate at Caulfield Grammar as well, I believe, and he's a key forward who is capable of doing some special things in the air. And then they've got some others, Oscar Cafiso, Ollie Wilson, and Mitch Toner as a bottom major too is one to watch, who represented Vic Country as a under-16s player.
Moving on, we'll go to the reigning premiers, Brighton. Like we said, quite a stacked list last year, but a lot of focus from last year's side actually came from some of their bottom majors who will be in that year 12, year this year. Who are the names at Brighton?
Yeah, well, Brighton will be headlined by Archie Ludowick. So I think the interesting storyline, or one of the interesting storylines for Brighton, will be how Archie Ludowick goes playing a different style of footy, because Coates League footy is a lot more open, it's a lot more fast paced, it's a lot higher skilled, generally speaking, whereas school footy, there's probably a bit more structure and it can be a little bit more congested at times. How he goes in that regard will be really interesting, but he's certainly had a strong start to the year, so they'll love having access to him. Brighton Grammar, and then Kai Fincher is one who's played off half back, been one of the form players in the Coates League for the Sandringham Dragons. He'll get some midfield time at Brighton Grammar, and then Archie Butler and Jack Circuit are a couple of Sandy's leading bottom majors who'll feature prominently for Brighton Grammar as well. Josh Granger, a Vic Country Summer Hub member, will be the key man in defence, and then James Arnold and Rowan McKenzie, the brother of Cam McKenzie, who's obviously at Hawthorn, will also be a part of that lineup. So I think they'll be typically a really difficult matchup for opposition teams to come up against. The blockbuster match is obviously the Caulfield match on July 26th for both schools, given the caliber of talent they both tend to have, and also the depth too.
Move on to Haileybury, obviously a side that's produced a lot of good AFL talent. Certainly helps when you've got Matthew Lloyd as your senior coach. They've had Scott Pendlebury helping out as an assistant, and they've had an array of other ex-AFL names on their coaching force. What are the names at Haileybury this year for the Bloods?
Yeah, well, you talked about Matthew Lloyd. I'll be interested to see how Tyron Armu. It'd be interesting to speak to Tyron Armu actually at the end of the season, how much he's gained off being coached by Matthew Lloyd. Obviously, he's a Vic Country member and he's a key forward himself. So that contested marking side of things is his real strength. But certainly Matthew Lloyd will add nuance to his game, and yeah, hopefully he is able to really spearhead that forward line. And then they've got a couple of midfielders that probably not necessarily the biggest names at Coates Talent League level, but are really highly regarded in APS circles in Jack Lawrence and Louis Hodder, both at the Dandenong Stingrays. So expect them to play really key roles now that they're in year 12, particularly Louis Hodder. He's one I'm really excited to see turn out for the Bloods this year. Tyron Armory's younger brother Corey featured for Dandenong's under 16s during the under 16s Coates Talent League earlier in the year, and also looks like he's a chance to play for Vic Country, playing in the trial as well. So he's one I'm excited to see, a 197 centimetre sort of tall utility. And then, yeah, they've got a conga line of talent. Dylan Linden, Ben Devonish, George Dimer is one who's on Sandy's list, Ben Chalice and Dandenong Stingrays, Caleb Lovett. So, yeah, a lot to look forward to from the Bloods. And, yeah, like the two we've already touched on, I think they'll be a real force.
Next on our list, Scotch College. A squad that features a couple of AFL Academy boys, and one that you think can really ruffle the feathers of the big three schools in the APS.
Yeah, I do. I think they're a real dark horse because their talent is a little bit deeper than it is most years. I think they always tend to have one, two, or three maybe top end talent, but then sometimes it can drop off a little bit quicker than those top end schools. Whereas this year there's probably a little bit more to work with. So I'll run through all the names. Louis Emmett, an AFL Academy sort of ruck forward, is going to be a really good player for them, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes. Riley Onley is one that probably would want to return to form, but having such a big brute force in the midfield will be really beneficial for them, given the style of footy that APS tends to be. Jack Ison will be really interesting, and one to watch for Carlton fans as well is that Jagger Smith will be a part of the coaching panel at Scotch College, and Jack Ison will also feature for them, a Carlton Next Generation Academy prospect who hasn't played so far this season due to injury for the Oakley Chargers. So yeah, watch out for that for Carlton fans, or certainly monitor it from a distance at least. And then, yeah, lots of others as well. Sam Allen from the Oakley Chargers, Kobe Williams, Western Bulldogs, and Hawthorn linked talent is a potential surprise packet. Rio Barry's an exciting goal kicker. Russell Clark, Ben Ferguson, Tanner Armstrong, who's part of the Vic Country Summer Hub as a bottom major, and Harry Wilson, another Murray Bushranger rather, who's from boarding at Scotch College, is one to watch out of the back line.
Next on list, Carey Grammar. Looks like their list full of some familiar surnames for 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think leading that is Will Darcy. And you don't see players too often get drafted straight out of school footy, but Will Darcy is certainly generating that sort of conversation with obviously the bloodlines that he's got as the son of Luke Darcy and the brother of Sam Darcy, one of the most exciting players in the competition at the moment. And he's a key defender. He's really good below his knees. He's a really clean player. And yeah, probably a little bit of a surprise that he didn't make a Coates Talent League list. But if there's any player who's going to get drafted straight out of school footy this year, I think it's going to be Will Darcy. We saw Charlie Edwards probably got drafted to some degree out of school footy a couple of years ago, but he did have a Coates Talent League club backing him as well, and got to play for the Sandringham Dragons to really frank his form in the back end of the year. Will Darcy doesn't have that, so it'll be a bit more difficult. But yeah, we'll see how much emphasis some of the recruiters put on school footy with whether Will Darcy can feature in draft conversations. And then some others. Max Kondo-Janis is going to be their captain. He's a key defender, really good overhead. Zach McCarthy in first round calculations, a Collingwood linked prospect. Ned Lamott, Levi West as a bottom major, as well as some others to keep an eye on. So yeah, they always produce a little bit of talent, so worth keeping an eye on. They'll always be competitive.
Look to, I guess, one of the big games each year is the Geelong Derby, the Grammar versus College bust up. We'll start with the college side. Who do you look forward to from the Geelong College list?
Yeah, I think Oliver Johnston's one that's probably flown under the radar on the Falcons list a little bit, and he's at Geelong College too. He's trialled for Vic Country, had a really solid start to the year, and I think he's got some really good traits. Whether he makes Vic Country, I'm not sure, but hopefully he's able to string some strong form together for Geelong College and then bring that into the back end of the year for the Falcons, because I do really like him as a player. Charlie Lawless, another one. He's a defender who will look to lock down hard for Geelong College, and perhaps there'll be a bit of offensive output as well, because there's a lot to like about him. And then some others as well. Archie Daffy as a 2026 Richmond father-son prospect, and then the Hanegraaff brothers, Archie and Charlie, are others to keep an eye on from Geelong College, but probably a more modest top end talent than some of these other powerhouse schools.
Well, then you mentioned Geelong Grammar as well, probably a school that's batted a bit deeper,
Yeah.
or known to be batting a bit deeper, and they've got a few of the top names coming out of the Falcons program this year.
Yeah, they do. And the match between those two schools that you referenced will be on May 31. So that's always one, like you say, that's worth getting down to. The atmosphere is always electric at that Derby Day. Josh Lindsay and Ben Rongdit headline Geelong Grammar's talent this year. Josh Lindsay, obviously an AFL Academy member, whose kicking is arguably the best in the draft. Ben Rongdit's athleticism is one to watch. And then they've got a really good group of bottom majors as well. Jack Pickett, Noah Williams, and Fletcher Puline all trialled for Vic Country as bottom majors a couple of weeks ago. Jack Pickett's goal kicking is something that could surprise a few people. Wouldn't be surprised if he's up there in the competition's goal kicking as a whole this year for the APS competition. And then some other names: Will Bennett from the Bendigo Pioneers, Ned Badrock, Angus Tippett are all Coach Talent League listed, and Tom Steinfort captured a little bit of attention with his game at the under-16s trial a couple of weeks ago. So as a year 10, he's one who might get some exposure for at first 18 level quite early.
Melbourne Grammar, probably not one that's as top heavy as others. What do you see the expectations for them this year?
Yeah, probably a little bit lower, a little bit along the lines of Geelong College. Just, yeah, they don't have that Coates Talent League talent to call on as much as some of the other schools. Miles Tyra, though, is the main name to watch here. He's a ruck, and he's one that Sandy are really pleased with how he started the season from a Coates Talent League point of view. There's going to be massive competition for spots in the Vic Metro sort of tall department this year with Zach McCarthy, Louis Emmett, Cooper Duff-Titler, and Archie Ludowick, all sort of ruck forwards who'll be in the squad and first round prospects. So yeah, Tyra hopefully will be able to transfer some of his Sandy form into school level to prove he deserves to play Vic Metro, because he'll be one to watch, hopefully can tear some games apart. But yeah, he'll be probably fighting an uphill battle. Archie Edwards, another one to keep a close eye on, the brother of Charlie Edwards, who I referenced earlier, and he's part of the Sandringham Dragons squad too.
One school always quite competitive and loud and boisterous is the St. Kevin's side. Who's the best talents on offer from them this year?
Yeah, so they've got James McHale, who's probably flown under the radar a little bit in a strong Sandringham Dragons lineup, but he's got a bit of energy about him and tends to use the footy quite well. So he probably leads the way for Skevs. And then they've got some others as well. Archie Fogarty is one to keep an eye on. Albert McGowan, really highly regarded Sandringham Dragons bottom major, who'll probably get some midfield exposure for St. Kevin's, and Alex Drever as well. Their blockbuster game is always against Xavier. That always tends to produce highlights, and there tends to be close finishes. So yeah, St. Kevin's, they don't have the top end talent probably of some of the other schools that we've referenced, but like you say, they are always competitive. So they're certainly not a school to write off. They had Harry O'Farrell drafted out of there last year, and he's part of a pretty good group of alumni in recent years too.
One of the biggest, if not the biggest schools in the APS, Xavier College, produced endless AFL talent over the years. I think Finn O'Sullivan, one of the most recent, but who's headlining this year's class of prospects?
Yeah, this year Jack Dalton's the main name, but he's probably not going to feature until the back end of the APS season because of a broken arm suffered in pre-season. He's a smooth-moving Sandringham Dragons midfielder, under 16s Vic Metro MVP, has a really, really impressive resume and is a really classy operator. But the name to watch who's probably going to feature more throughout the season is Jai Saxoner, the Collingwood link small forward, who's gotten a fair bit of attention in recent weeks. Obviously, he's kicking goals for Oakley. Can he sustain that form through the middle of the year and playing in a different side? That's something worth keeping an eye on from a Xavier College point of view. But yeah, he's one who'll hopefully capture the attention of some onlookers and get on some highlight reels because I really like what he offers. And then some others, Sam Nicholas from the GWV Rebels. I think he'll be a much more prominent player at APS level than what he is at GWV Rebels level, albeit he has played some strong footy for the Rebels. Jack Hayter from the Sandringham Dragons. Elijah Davey has that Davey bloodline. We know how talented they are. And then Ryder Daffy as well. He made a name for himself on the weekend when Xavier came from 40 points down to defeat Scotch in the last couple of minutes of the game. He was the one who finished it off for them and got them in front. So no doubt there'll be some eyeballs on him if he can continue that sort of form throughout the season. Looking forward to what they can produce this season because I think they can really challenge that big three.
And rounding out the APS season will be Wesley College. Felix Knight, one of your favourites, probably headlining their list this year.
Yeah, he is. I think they've got a really underrated midfield. They're not necessarily, they don't have the top 10, top 15 prospects of your Haileyburys and your Brightons and these sorts of schools, Caulfield in particular. But Felix Knight, someone who's right on the edge of the first round. He got 48 disposals in a school game last year, so look for him to be an absolute enforcer in that midfield. Lockie Hicks won the Vic Metro MVP at under 16s level last year, so he'll feature prominently in the midfield too. Judd Begill from the Gippsland Power will have a big role to play. Flynn Woolhouse is a bottom major. And then the one I'm most keen to watch is actually Jacob Marin, who might be the best key defender at APS level. He's had a strong start to the season for the Western Jets. He's really hard to beat one-on-one, 197 centimetres. He'll be pushing for Vic Metro selection this year. And I think there's a lot of upside with him. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes against the likes of Archie Ludowick and Tyron Armour and these sorts. Obviously, Ludowick playing for Brighton, who's a powerhouse midfield. Haileybury's got a powerhouse midfield feeding Armour. So it'll be a couple of tough days for Jacob Marin, but if he can play some strong games, then that'll certainly propel his chances. And he's one I think deserves a little bit more attention, not just from a school point of view, but from a Coates League point of view as well, the Western Jets defender.
Before we wrap up the APS chat, let's get some predictions going. I'll ask you your premiers. Who else might be in the frame? Who do you think is going to kick the most goals? And which teenagers do you think are the surprise packets for the season?
Yeah, I'll start with the premiers. I do think it's Caulfield Grammar. I just don't think you can go past a midfield that's got Ollie Greaves as the big body, Rory Wright as that combative, aggressive player, and then the smooth moving ability of Callum Smith and some others like Marlon Neocleus will get thrown in there. In the frame, I've got Brighton. Like we say, they're ever competitive. They've got players like Archie Butler, Kai Fincher who'll go through the midfield, and they're always a powerhouse. Scotch is also there. We talked about the strength of that they've got probably across every line, really. And I think Riley Onley's one who will hopefully fill his boots in the APS season and then can come out of that with some form for the Murray Bushrangers. Most goals, Tyron Armour, I think he's one who the Haileybury Bloods are going to be really looking to inside 50 this year. And he's got such capabilities to take contested marks. And because he's such a mature body, I think he's going to be pretty hard to stop. So look for him to kick some bags. And then some surprise packets. I touched on Louis Hodder before. I think he's one who, will rack up a lot of the footy most weeks. Sam Nicholas as well, and then Mitch Toner for Caulfield Grammar. I think Mitch Toner's main enemy in terms of being a real enforcer is probably just the depth of talent that Caulfield Grammar's got. But I think as that sort of stronger midfielder, he'll be a key player for them and hopefully can translate that back to the Dandenong Stingrays late in the year. He's the brother of Jack Toner at Williamstown, cousin of Sam Toner, who's in mid-season draft calculations.
Perfect. Well, we'll wrap it up there on the APS, but it'd be remiss of us not to touch on the AFL Academy game against Coburg on the weekend. We also had the Young Guns versus Vic Metro trial side on the Saturday. We're probably going to park our Young Guns assessment until next week. Just get a look at both of the most recent game and then their game up against the Vic Country side this coming weekend. So hold on till next week when we'll have our we'll unpack the Young Guns and maybe some of the Vic Metro and Vic Country prospects and who stood out from those games. Obviously, plenty of discussion from the Young Guns in the mid-season draft run-in with some of the names that put their hands up for potential interest from AFL clubs ahead of the May 28 intake. So Young Guns chat will park until next week, but we'll dissect a little bit of the AFL Academy game from Sunday at Whitten Oval against Coburg. They got a win against a Lions outfit, missing some of their top line names. No Jack Bytel, no Flynn Gentle, no Cooper Keogh either. So I think they tried to just open it up a little bit more to some of their younger ranks, Coburg as well, just to see who could stand out against some of the nation's best emerging draft talent. But it was a pretty convincing win in the end for the AFL Academy. Ollie Greaves among the standouts. Josh Lindsay was named best of field. Dyson Sharp, along with Greaves, really showing, as those big body mids, their size and their competitiveness against state league opposition. Obviously, it's something we've seen with Sharp already, dating back to last year's Samford campaign in their finals run with Central Districts. And then, be surprised not to see Ollie Greaves playing at VFL level, likely with Box Hill sometime in 2025. Others as well through midfield. Dan Annable, again, at his classy and composed best. Cooper Duff-Tyler damaging both in the middle and forward. Louis Emmett probably having one of his best games to start the season. I really liked the games of Kobe Evans and Matt Leray, two prospects probably haven't seen as much of, certainly not in person. What were your takeaways from Sunday's game between the AFL Academy and Coburg?
Yeah, I think Archie Ludowick was the main takeaway for me. Kicked the 2 goals too, but was clearly the best forward on the ground for the AFL Academy from a key forward point of view, certainly alongside Wes Wally, if you look at sort of the smaller forwards. But yeah, that's the second time in a row for the AFL Academy that Archie Ludowick's really shone. And I think it really impresses me because he is a rawer frame. You look at players like Liam Heatherton and Cody Curtin, and Liam Heatherton didn't necessarily have a poor AFL Academy, just probably wasn't able to get reward for sort of his effort at times, wasn't able to pull down the marks, just able to bring it to ground. Whereas Archie Ludowick's ability to take contested marks against senior bodies, given he's a bit skinnier than Heatherton and Curtin and those types, really, really impressive and looked the most likely targets. So that was probably the main takeaway for me. And I guess, yeah, you talked about those midfielders, Dan Annable and Ollie Greaves throughout both of the academy games, I think really established themselves as bona fide mids in this draft class. Ollie Greaves arguably now the best big-bodied midfielder available in the open draft with how well he is going and certainly right in top 10 calculations. And then I guess the one player you didn't touch on, but I know we're both fans of, was Dylan Patterson, 15 touches in each of the 2 games. Probably felt like he had a bit more impact in the first game and the second game, but finished off the second game with a lot of class when Coburg did look to mount a little bit of a late comeback. He was one off the half-back line that was really, really important. But yeah, you talked about Kobe Evans and Harley Barker. What was it about them that sort of caught your eye? You're obviously there in person and they were patrolling the wings for the AFL Academy, the 2 South Australian boys.
Yeah, riches of talent. When you look at Evans and what he's been able to do across the last 12 months with WA, and I just thought he had some really clean moments. No panic. You're probably not expecting these teenagers to do so up against the VFL opposition, but every time he gathered, he just made the right decision. Not a high accumulator on Sunday, but still a very made the most impact he could out of each disposal, just with some smart thinking and some good running, side steps and finding the right targets. That was a big tick for him. Yeah, as you mentioned, Barker, Matt Leray, the 2 SA boys, I thought, really controlled themselves out wide, some good disposal, similar with Evans, some smart ball use, good on the defensive side of their game as well. It was always interesting to see who was floating out wide. You got Fred Rodriguez in there, Riley Onley, Sam Cumming. The riches of talent in this side is quite well known already. But they were some of the names that I thought really stood out in a way that, when they're not with the big accumulators like we might have seen with Greaves and Sharp inside. On the outside, they just had some of the best decision making on the day. I thought that was certainly a big tick for them. So that was very promising. On top of that, Willem Dersman, was great to see him back at his best after a quieter first game. Obviously, wasn't as relied upon in defence, still played a lot of backline, but got shuffled into the midfield as well, which was great to see. So plenty of positives from across that second game, I think, with how the team was able to gel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just probably one more point to touch on is, just Cooper Duff-Tyler maybe didn't have the consistency across the carnival of someone like an Ollie Greaves or a Josh Lindsay, but I think some of the moments he had were sort of told you why he's regarded as the most talented player in this draft crop. And I guess combining that with what he was able to do for the Calder Cannons in the first 3 weeks of the season, it looks to me like the biggest opponent to him being pick 1 won't be another player. It'll just be his position, whether whether a club is willing to take a ruck at pick 1 or whether they would prefer to get rucks through other mechanisms like the mid-season draft, the SSP, or the trade period, players who are already ready-made to come into the team more immediately. And it's something we'll, clearly explore as the year goes on. But from a pure talent point of view, it's hard to really argue with the consistency of output that he's put forward as a ruck, as a marking sort of player. He's got that combativeness and he's got the athleticism as well. He's sort of got it all and, showed it in spurts. But, that's a lot more than a lot of rucks do at AFL Academy level, given the size of their opponents who are often 24, 25, 26 or even a little bit older. So, competed really well.
There were a few absentees in the second game. Obviously, Ezekiel and Noah Hibbins-Hargreaves didn't feature in that first game either through their injuries. Noah Chamberlain out with a knee injury. Hibbins-Hargreaves was actually the runner for the AFL Academy side, so that might have been a nice little experience for him. And then one other thing to touch on, I had a great chat with Cody Curtin post-game. Probably came into the game a bit more in the second half when he was moved forward. Was able to have a bit more impact as a target option and kick that lovely goal from outside 50. So as a player who's spent a lot of time down back and proven himself a fair bit as a defender, it was good to see some positives as a forward. Obviously, he's been a big goal kicker to start the preseason and into the new season over in the Waffle Colts, and obviously finished quite strong as a goal kicker in last year's finals run. But great to chat with him. Full interview on zerohanger.com if you want to check that one out when he's talking about his game, his positioning, some of the role models he's been able to bounce off, and on top of that, what his relationship was like with his brother Dan at Adelaide. Growing up, obviously quite a competitive household for those two. So, full chat on zerohanger.com, and you can also catch the rest of our draft coverage on Zero Hanger and on our YouTube page, Crafted Up's Instagram page. And before we sign off, Jonty, what should we be looking forward to over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, we've got the Young Guns taking on Vic Country this weekend, so look for some of those players to put their names forward. Unfortunately, the first Young Guns game was marred by weather a little bit, but there were still a few players who were able to show some flashes, but look for that series to round out. And the Northern Academies have just started their sort of series in the Coates Talent League. They played their first game last week. So look for some of the Northern Academy players who missed out on the AFL Academy to really look to push their draft cases. Players like Max King, Kobe Coulson, Cooper Collins, Jai Murray, and Raf Gisu are some of the names to keep an eye out for. Looking forward to seeing how they go at the top level of Talent Pathway in 2025.
Yeah, Ally squad won't be far away. A lot of those names featuring across those squads. And obviously Vic Metro, Vic Country still to come as well. So we can expect those soon enough ahead of the national champs. As you mentioned, we've got the Young Guns coming up. I think it's this Saturday or Sunday against Vic Country. So that'll be another one of focus for next week and plenty more. Obviously Coates Talent League, Sandful, Waffle action. Latest from the VFL as we ramp up to the mid-season draft. So you can stay up to date on Craft of the Draft through our Instagram page, through Zero Hangers YouTube and zerohanger.com.au. Till next time, catch ya.